what's the difference between DIY and doing it yourself? It's the difference between a part-time passion and a full-time business. Wix gives you the power to turn your passion into a moneymaker. With a website that fits your unique vision and the business tools you need to succeed. Let your ideas flow with AI that guides you, but keeps you in the driver's seat. Manage your business from one dashboard and keep it growing with built-in marketing features. It's time to turn your daydream into your dream job. Do it yourself. Go to Wix.com.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to say, ahoy, or land ho, and not feel weird about it. So here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance offers access to the largest towing fleet on the water. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to say, shiver me timbers, and not feel weird about that either. Get more with Geico.
This is Wheelbearings. I'm Dan Roth.
And I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad. Let's just dive right into it.
Okay, you're driving the Odyssey and the I-Pace, and I had the Mazda 6 Signature and the Volkswagen Jetta, so why don't you go first? Because I'm interested in the Honda Odyssey, but also, most importantly, the I-Pace. So are you gonna make me wait, or should we?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, excellent. All right, carry on.
So yeah, I just got back last night from a trip to California. I was out there for like 5 days, 4 or 5 days. I spent a couple of days in the Petaluma area, driving around in the Jaguar I-Pace, and then went to an Intel Analyst Summit in Santa Clara. But before that, I had the 2019 Honda Odyssey Elite, which is the most loaded possible version of the Honda minivan that you can get, and it's pretty loaded, all right. You know, it comes with just about everything, almost everything you can imagine, except for any kind of hybrid powertrain. So, like all Odysseys right now, it's powered by a 3.5 liter V6, Honda's very nice engine. Paired with a 10-speed automatic transmission, and the Odyssey just got a redesign last year, so it's still pretty fresh. Although the redesign was kind of evolutionary more than revolutionary. They kept the same kind of zigzag belt line that they had on the previous generation Odyssey, and added some sculpting to the sides to give it a little more interesting look to it. And changed the front and the rear, and changed just about everything inside. So the Odyssey, for a long time has generally been considered, one of the best minivans out there. Not that there's a whole lot of minivans left out there, but it's always been a fairly well regarded van. And like most modern minivans, it's not so mini anymore. The Elite version comes really well equipped with all kinds of gadgetry and technology in it. They've got Honda's latest infotainment system in there, which includes such revolutionary technologies as a rotary volume knob.
But does it have a vacuum?
Yes, it does. I think. I'm pretty sure it does. I didn't actually try the vacuum. I didn't have any need to vacuum anything, but I believe it does have the vacuum in the back. If this one didn't, it's definitely available with a built-in vacuum. So, one of the main reasons for having a minivan is, if you have kids to haul around, and if you have kids to haul around, a minivan is more often than not actually a much more logical choice than, say an SUV, like a Grand Cherokee or something like that. Especially if you've got younger kids, and you've got to strap them into booster seats, with an SUV, you've got to reach up and get them into the seat and reach around to get them buckled in and everything. And it's a royal pain. Minivans are, a little closer to the ground. And with the sliding doors, sliding doors are awesome when you've got young kids that are getting in and out, because they never get, flipped open and denting the cars parked next to you in the parking lot. It's a lot easier to maneuver around them. It's a lot easier to reach inside, when you're handling those kids. Minivans are just, they're the perfect form factor for a family with kids.
Which is why everybody hates them, apparently. But no, I mean, you're right.
Yeah, I don't pretend to understand the logic of typical American car buyers. It just does not make sense to me, but it does not compute, as they would say. The Odyssey has a lot of great stuff in it. Unlike the Chrysler minivans, the Pacifica, and the older Dodge Caravan, which is still kicking around, there's no stow and go seats in the Odyssey. That's something that is unique to the Chryslers, but it does have some other interesting features. If you get the option with just the 2 seats in the second row, you can actually slide the seats left and right. So you can, if you push them both to the outside, you'll have a walkway down the middle. If you want to have easier access from the driver's side, you can push them both over to the right, or conversely from the other side, you can push them both over to the left. So you can move them around and do all kinds of fun stuff with them. The Odyssey's also got some neat features built in, like the ability to connect multiple phones to the infotainment system, and you can hand off control to somebody sitting in the second or third row to control the music that's playing, or whatever audio is playing from a separate device other than the driver's phone, which can be cool. It can be fun on a road trip. If you want to hand off control to different people to manage it, you have to use an app have to load up a Honda app on your phone to do it, but it's a pretty interesting feature. But overall, the Odyssey's a really nice minivan. Drives and handles really well. It's got decent fuel economy. It's not great fuel economy. I got about 22 miles per gallon, I think. And if you really want, to get the maximum in efficiency, your best bet is absolutely the Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid. But other than that, the Odyssey is one of the, probably one of the best options. And, as I said, because it's much newer than the Toyota Sienna, it's got features that the Sienna lacks. And even when the next generation Sienna arrives, it probably won't have Android Auto capability in it, which no other Toyota does at this point yet. Honda supports both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So it's a great family hauler.
Yeah, well, I always found that the Odyssey drives. If you like driving, it has that little bit of sportiness in it that none of the other vans tend to have. The Sienna is sort of a lot more compliant, I guess, and soft, and the Pacifica is also set up kind of soft and not to embarrass itself, but it doesn't give you the things that the Odyssey does in terms of, like, there's actual some steering feel and feedback in the Odyssey, which I was surprised by the last time I drove one. You can still have a good time behind the wheel of it, and like you say, the fact that those doors on the sides, they open up and you can get right in there. There's a huge opening, and it makes a really good case for a van being the ideal vehicle, and it's nicely appointed. That's the other thing I don't like about the Sienna, is it's such an old model now. They changed the outside. They've not changed the inside of the Sienna for like a decade.
Yeah.
And it's got probably the worst interior that you can find in a Toyota right now. And the Odyssey's, when they refreshed it, they made sure to step it up a little bit with materials. And I'm sure in the Elite, it's quite nice.
Oh yeah, it's very nice, which is befitting its price tag. The
right,
base
that's what I was going to
Odyssey
get at.
LX, starts at just over 30,000. By the time you step up to the Elite, with its heated and ventilated front seats, wireless phone charger, 11 speaker premium audio system, rain sensing wipers, and all kinds of other stuff, you're talking $47,000.
Yeah, and I guess it's a good deal at that $30,000 level. What's kind of annoying is that all the stuff you want, I think they make you pay extra for. Like, I don't think it comes standard with the better headlights and stuff. I know that there's some standard safety equipment, but the touring and elite trim levels are sort of, when you're that family buyer, you want all the goodies because it sort of keeps the peace, right?
Oh yeah.
and you're gonna have to pay for it. You're gonna have to dig in for it. That's a little annoying to me. There's no sort of like mid-level that's equipped, and there are mid-levels.
Well, there are mid-level ones, that have a lot of the features. They just don't have everything.
Right. So my statement giveth and taketh away. I guess there is that mid-level, but shop carefully. But it's a really, really good van. And I, in the past, had said, I sort of like the softness and compliance of the Sienna better, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I think I like the Odyssey probably the best as a driver's vehicle. And it has the 10-speed auto, right? So, I can't remember how long ago it got that. Whether that's a
last year when they did the redesign last year is when they introduced the 10-speed automatic.
So how is that with the V6? Does it get confused? Does it hunt, or is it?
It doesn't really seem to hunt at all. It's got pretty good control, and didn't really do anything unexpected, or it wasn't annoying in any way. Let's put it that way.
And with a family van, there's so many other things to annoy you.
Yeah, like the family.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm looking at the trim levels now, so you can get like an EXL with leather and stuff, and that'll come in at like 37, and that's right in the middle of the range. Every trim level except for the base LX comes standard with the Honda Sensing package, which is the driver assist package. So you get adaptive cruise control, lane keeping system, blind spot monitors, things like that. That comes standard on everything but the absolute cheapest version. Yeah. So, I mean, do you remember when minivans were the thing that everybody was complaining about?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now they don't complain about them; they just ignore them.
Yeah, which is, that's a damn shame. I kind of wish, we had more people in vans. It's just easier to get in and out of, and they're bigger. Like the amount of space in a van is just incredible. But I'm still more interested in the I-Pace.
One of the if you do have young ones, one of the neat features that they have on the touring and elite trim levels is something they call cabin watch, which has there's a camera that has night vision capability that's mounted on the roof, on the ceiling, just behind the driver, that will display on the infotainment screen, so you can keep an eye on what's going on in the back, so you can see if the kids are fighting or asleep, without having to turn around and actually look at them. You can just glance over at the screen and then, yell at them without actually turning around and taking your eyes off the road.
It is legitimately eyes in the back of your head. So,
yeah, absolutely.
For teenage dating, that's terrible. And poor kids, they can't get away with it. But at least it doesn't have the voice of God thing. Like I think that's the Sienna too that has that, right, where it goes over the audio system.
Actually, I think they do have that on here.
Do they?
I believe they do. Yes. So you can you can speak to people back in the third row, over the audio system.
Like a pilot, like, we got a little turbulence here.
Yeah.
I'm in for all right. Well, I mean, I'm still, like I said, a lot more interested in the electric Jaguar.
Okay. So let's get to the electric Jaguar then. So, it's funny, in my formative years, British cars were something that I really liked, but they had a terrible reputation. A big part of that reputation, for their quality and reliability reputation was related to their electrical systems. Most British cars, of the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s had electrical systems produced by a company called Lucas, which, as it turns out, I actually worked for at one point in my career.
Prince of Darkness.
Joseph Lucas, the founder of Lucas. The running joke when I was growing up was that, he was the Prince of Darkness. And, it would not be uncommon to find, cartoons and car magazines, with Lucas headlight switches in British cars, that were labeled, they were toggle switches labeled, off, flicker, and dim. The British cars were just generally, notorious for bad electrical systems, and in particular Jaguars, which is why if you look, if you shop around for old classic Jaguars, it's actually, surprisingly surprisingly common to find vintage Jaguars that have been retrofitted with American, particularly Chevy small block V8s, because the small block V8 was literally small enough. It's such a tidy package. You could fit it into all kinds of different cars, and it made for a much more reliable, better performing vehicle than than you would often get with the original engines. But what we have now that was, went on sale in Europe a few months ago and started deliveries about a month and a half ago here in the U.S. is the Jaguar I-Pace, the first all-electric Jaguar. And, it's been tough to get into one of these because, it's one of the finalists for North American Car of the Year this year. And so, as it happens, unless you're a juror for one of the Car of the Year programs, it's been tough to get into one. But I managed to snag one for a weekend while I was in California, and drove it up to Petaluma, and this weekend on the new Screensavers show, you'll see the segment I did with Leo Laporte, where we took it for a drive and reviewed it. But I spent a bunch of time on my own just driving it around Northern California, and this is a fantastic car to drive. It's sort of a semi crossover, more like a tall hatchback. It doesn't really look like any other Jag before. It's got some of the current contemporary Jaguar design cues, like the grille, the headlights, the taillights, kind of the shape of the side glass. But it's really, Ian Callum, who's the head of design at Jaguar, has described it. They wanted to take this opportunity when they were doing their first electric Jaguar to really take advantage of the electric powertrain. So this thing has the typical kind of layout you find on most modern EVs. The battery pack is, low and under the floor. There's two motors, just like, most Teslas and most other higher performance EVs. About 400 horsepower right now in this initial version. I suspect at some point there will be a higher performance version as well. And that's good for 0 to 60 of about 4.5 seconds. And it feels really good because in typical EV fashion, you got all your torque right off the line. So it's quick, not as ludicrously quick as a top end Tesla, but more than quick enough for, pretty much anything you want to do except drag racing a Tesla. For the most part, I had very few complaints about this car. I like the way it looks. I like the way it drives, driving around, some of the curving roads, around, in Northern California, it was great to drive, even on some particularly broken pavement. It still has decent ride quality, even on the 22-inch wheels that were on the one that I was driving. This one was, basically loaded with all the available options, including a $4,300 carbon fiber appearance package that had added carbon fiber caps on the mirrors and carbon fiber trim on the rocker panels and carbon fiber inserts on the 22-inch alloy wheels. There was bits of carbon fiber everywhere, and even on those wheels, it still got had decent ride quality. It wasn't plush, but it was more than comfortable enough. The only real complaints I had about this thing, the infotainment system was, kind of the standard infotainment system that's on the latest batches of Jaguars and Land Rovers. So you had kind of a dual screen setup. There was the upper screen that was the primary screen, and then a smaller one below it that was in between two rotary knobs for the climate control. and those rotary knobs had their own little displays in the middle of them that showed the temperature. So when you twist the knob, for the dual zone climate control, you'd see the temperature displayed right in the middle of the knob. And then in between that was a smaller screen that you use to, direct where you want the air to go and things like that. The car I was driving was still a pre-production model, so it wasn't one of the it hadn't been updated with the latest software yet that's going in the cars that are shipping to customers. So it didn't yet have support for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is in the cars that are going to customers, and the interface was a little slow at times, especially if you were trying to tap in a destination on the virtual keyboard for the navigation system. You'd tap a letter, and you'd have to wait 2 seconds before it actually appeared on the screen. It was very annoying. But other than that, it worked okay. The only other issue, and this is an issue, most everybody is complaining about with the I-Pace. It has a 90 kilowatt hour battery pack. Which is, what was on, all the top end Teslas until they shifted to a 100 kilowatt hour version, sometime earlier this year or late last year. And you would think, Teslas with 90 kilowatt hour battery packs, we're getting about 300 miles of range, and the I-Pace is only rated at 238.
That was my question is what that's all about and what kind of range you saw out of it.
Yeah. So, the 238, is what you get on the standard 18 or 19 inch wheels. On the 22s, those are quite a bit heavier. They have a lot more inertia. And, the tires, this one was running on Pirelli P0s, which are great for handling. Not so great for low rolling resistance. I would estimate I was getting closer to maybe 210 or so, based on, the rate at which it, seemed to be consuming. I would estimate that if I ran it all the way down to zero, I could probably get just, 205 to 210 miles maybe, which is, it's okay. It's fine for most driving, but, it's not. It's not what you would expect out of a car with a battery that size. The Chevy Bolt has, a battery that's 1/3 smaller. It's a 60 kilowatt hour battery, and it gets, better range than that. The range was not great. But, aside from that, everything else about it I did like. It gives you the option to, set the default to be, for the regenerative braking, you can set the default to be strong regenerative braking. So you can basically drive it one pedal, without ever touching the brakes, and it'll bring the car to a full stop. It's everything else about the car, has a lovely interior, very comfortable and supportive seats. One other complaint, as well as while I'm at it, is visibility straight out the back. When you look at the I-Pace, you'll see it's got a fairly high rear deck. There's basically a fairly narrow slit of a rear window. So you're not going to see much straight out the back of the car. Obviously it's got a backup camera system as all new cars do now, when you're backing out of a parking space. But, when you're just driving down the road, when you glance at the mirror, you aren't going to see a whole lot behind you.
You've got 510 feet-pound of torque. So behind you, it doesn't matter.
That's true. Yeah. So, it's all good. I did try out a couple of DC fast charging stations in the Petaluma area. And right now there's the two DC fast charging stations that were nearby where I was are both 50 kilowatt stations. The I-Pace does support 100 kilowatt charging right now. And I've seen at least a couple of reports where people have tried it on 150 kilowatt chargers, and they did get it to charge at 135 to 140 kilowatts. So, at 150 kilowatts, you can get, about an 80% charge, in about half an hour. At 100 kilowatts, it's about 40 to 45 minutes. 50 kilowatts, I got about 60 miles of charge in about half an hour. Which is it's okay, but it's not great. And particularly because both of the stations that I tried out, were not necessarily where there was some place where I could go do something else. But that's an EV problem in general right now, until we start getting more of the high power DC fast charging stations built out. And that's something that's happening. While I was out there last week, Electrify America opened up their first station in California, which was in Livermore. And that one has 150 and 350 kilowatt chargers. So, by the time these are out there in the coming months, in higher volumes, there will be a lot more of these stations around.
Well, and I think that's an opportunity at some point for some either existing or a new company to figure out is like, look, if it's going to take us 20 minutes or a half hour to get a decent amount of charge into these cars and people are going to need to cool their heels, what is the opportunity for us to keep them occupied? Because it's not really that long an amount of time. And it brings you back to the idea of the diners with the restaurants and with the gas pumps and that kind of stuff. And
that's what some of the charging companies are trying to do, but it's hard to find a combination of good locations where there are some amenities like that, but that also have the electrical capacity to support DC fast charging. Because that's the other side of the issue. Is if you're going to put in charging stations, like if you're going to put in a facility that has 10 charging stations that can each do 150 kilowatts and that, and two of them that can also do 350 kilowatts, that's a lot of electrical capacity you got to have going into that station. And, there's not a lot of places that have that much power available. And so if you want to put it in a particular location, it doesn't have that much power available. Getting a utility to build it up, to run that capacity to that spot, or paying to have that capacity put in is really expensive. So that's why that's one of the big challenges with figuring out where to site these stations.
And is that going to be made any better sort of by having localized large scale storage where they just put in batteries and they run the fast charging off battery and charge it back up?
Yeah, that certainly helps. And that's something, especially for these 150 to 350 kilowatt chargers, that's something that is pretty much going to be essential, is to have, banks of stationary storage located on site so you can get those bursts of power. Because because this is the other thing, because these are commercial facilities, the companies operating these charging stations, they're the way they charge, the way utilities charge for commercial customers versus residential customers is they do what they call demand charges. And because, if you're going to have capacity for 350 kilowatts, even if you're not using it most of the time, they have to build out that capacity. And so, what happens is, you get charged, a metered rate. Like at home, you have a much lower capacity coming into your house. So you just get charged a rate per kilowatt hour. For commercial customers, where there's more capacity available, if you go above a certain threshold of power usage at any given time, at any point during the month, you get charged at a much higher rate for everything you use during that month. So, say you're using, say your normal consumption is 50 kilowatts, but you have a couple of spikes that go to 200 kilowatts, you're going to get charged based on that 200 kilowatt rate, and the costs go up dramatically. And this is one of the things that's hit Tesla really hard over the last couple of years. And this is why they're cutting back on giving free supercharging, because it's enormously expensive to do that. So, companies like Electrify America and ChargePoint and EVgo are, they're adding in, battery banks for these high-powered fast charging stations.
As long as they balance the amount of batteries they have with the amount of current they're using, like that's magic.
But those batteries aren't cheap either, though. So.
Yeah, that's true. So do you feel that the I-Pace is it the future of Jaguar? It's quite different, like you said, from other Jaguars, but it also still retains that Jaguar-ness to a certain degree. Is this we can expect more of this from Jaguar?
Oh, absolutely. Reports are that the next XJ is going to be an electric-only vehicle.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
And there's been some reports recently that Jaguar is considering just going straight EV, nothing but EVs by 2025. So, yes, the I-Pace definitely represents the future of Jaguar.
What did you find its most standout? I know it was a pre-production car, but what was the most standout feature or characteristic about it to you?
Aside from the noise or lack thereof, it drives like a Jaguar. So it's fast. It handles really well. I just really enjoyed driving it. It has great driving dynamics. I didn't do any off-roading with it, although from the first media drives that they did earlier this summer, in Portugal, they did have an off-road course, and apparently, with the right tires, it's actually quite good off-road as well. It's just a great vehicle to drive.
That seems odd. I know that they're pitching it as an SUV, but that's not a thing I would ever consider.
Well, they're not really pitching it as an SUV, though. It's a crossover, but it's really more like just a tall 5-door hatch.
Yeah.
It's fun when I was, doing this stuff with Leo, pulled it up next to his Model X, and it's a full foot shorter than a Model X. And it's not near, it's the Model X is several inches taller as well. So it's a significantly smaller vehicle than a Tesla Model X. But it drives like a Jaguar is all I can say. It's got really good steering feel. Great road holding. And because it's an EV with all that mass in the bottom of the car, it's got almost no body roll. And compared to a Tesla, Teslas are really fast in a straight line, but frankly, the Model S and the Model X don't really handle all that well. And, because they're kind of big and bulky, they're, when you're on tight, curving mountain roads, they're not that fun to drive in those kinds of environments. It's more of a great highway cruiser.
Yeah.
But not so much, as a sports car. And the I-Pace drives much more like a sports car.
Huh. Well, that's good. That bodes well. Because I was thinking about this as we sort of continue to get down that road, it's still going to be nice to drive cars no matter how they're powered. And I'm glad that we're actually seeing that now with the I-Pace and other sort of premium EVs. And it's still a premium car. It's very
absolutely.
much a direct competitor.
And this is the other thing, especially, when you compare it to a Tesla. Teslas are expensive, but they don't really feel very premium. Their interiors are kind of Spartan, and the materials don't feel, they don't feel like the kind of materials that you would expect in a car that costs $100,000 or more. And the I-Pace, the one I drove, it was loaded with everything, and it came to it was 93,000. But it starts at 70,000 before the $7,500 tax credit, which is certainly not cheap. But even at the $70,000 price point, it feels much more premium than a Tesla does. Now, granted, you don't have as much range, you don't have as much absolute acceleration capability. But, depending on what you're looking for, it may be a better choice for you.
Yeah, and I don't think either of those things are actually terribly important. They're comparison points on paper, but
yeah.
The range is plenty for most people, and the acceleration, nobody's ever going to use it, really. And once you get to the point of being that quick, again, like that's quicker than anybody can really handle anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 4.5 seconds 0 to 60 is more than realistically anything under 8 or 9 seconds 0 to 60 is more than enough to merge onto freeway traffic, which is the main time that you're going to use your maximum acceleration in regular driving.
Yeah. The I-Pace is sort of like the first of several, or it's one of the early arrivals of several premium EVs from established automakers, established premium brands. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out against stuff like the Model 3 and the Model X. I know, like you said, the Model X is
it's not really a competitor to the 3. And it doesn't really have any direct competition in the current Tesla lineup because it's smaller than the X. It's closer in size to the S. And certainly closer in price to the S. It's bigger than a 3 and more expensive than a 3. So it doesn't really have a direct Tesla competitor. And, I think anybody that's really interested in what Tesla offers is probably not going to be so interested in this, but somebody that likes what Jaguar represents and happens to want something electric, would probably find this a lot more appealing car than a Tesla. And, if you like what classic Jaguar represents, I don't know, I think we talked about it before, but, Jaguar a while ago announced that they are going to produce the E-Type 0, which they showed as a concept, I think at Geneva this year. Jaguar Special Vehicle Operations will do conversions on E-Types. So if you have an E-Type or you want an electric E-Type, you can bring it to Jaguar and they will turn it into an EV. And, also in the process, if it's not restored, they can do full restorations and everything. So they can basically make you a brand new E-Type that's, zero emissions. In fact, they're not the only ones who, recently to announce something like that. Aston Martin just announced a program, starting with the DB6, to do reversible EV conversions. So you can bring a classic Aston to them, and they will convert it from internal combustion to an electric vehicle. But in the process, they will also preserve all the parts that they removed from the car. So if at some point in the future you decide you want to go back to the original powertrain, they can restore it back to the way it was.
That's an amazing thing to just see. They're just looking for a new revenue stream. It's so clever.
Oh yeah,
it's just interesting to watch. All right. Well, so
what'd you drive?
I had last week. I had the Mazda 6 Signature, which it's a lovely sedan. And then this week I'm driving the Jetta S, the new Jetta S. But so the 6 feels like a premium driver's car should, and it's an interesting contrast against these two because they're sort of competitors. The design of the 6 is fantastic. Being a visual person who has a marginally creative job, that's high on my list. And so I thought that the 6, especially in signature trim, it's a car that presents itself as premium no matter what its actual price is. It's kind of the same thing that much of the Volvo lineup does. Like you look at it and it looks a particular way, and it makes it hard to peg the price. You actually wind up thinking that it's more expensive than it is because generally expensive goods and cars and things tend to have more attention placed on design. It's more of a premium for a premium car, I suppose. But because design was a priority, when you bother with refining something, it sort of intrinsically speaks to that deep commitment to a quality piece, and the 6 is really like it's a quality sedan. I know you've driven it as well. Mm-hmm. It's a really good car to drive, and this one was my first time driving the turbocharged 6. So I really liked the power, I liked the balance, and the poise of it. It's quite good to drive. I did think the turbo engine is a little bit. I didn't like the engine note, I guess, is what I was trying to say.
Oh.
Like, it's kind of growly, and it's not what I expected. It's definitely powerful, and it works really well with its automatic transmission, and the chassis is set up really nicely. But I thought it made a little bit more noise, and like not necessarily pleasant noise, not unpleasant either, but just like, I don't know. It seemed a little uncharacteristic where everything else is sort of luxurious and you've got a little bit of engine note in there, which seems like a weird complaint. But I guess it's just sort of
it sounds like it should be, in a Mazda speed vehicle as opposed to a standard, like a contemporary Mazda 6, the more premium feeling Mazda 6.
Yeah, or just, some, even with 4 cylinders, some sound, a little more trucky. Some sound a little like this one was kind of had a little bit of a growl to it. Some sound more like a little sewing machine, a little smoother, and the pitch of the noise is different. So it's just more of an aesthetic thing, I suppose. And then the other sort of mild complaint I had was the fuel economy was not spectacular, but part of that was it's hard to keep your foot out of it. So I got mid-20s fuel economy.
It's too enticing to take advantage of the power that it has.
Yeah, and it drives really well, and it's a really nice car. To the point where you sit and you go, this car was designed and built by people that understand the things that push our buttons as a car person. It's just the design inside is also beautiful, and it operates really well, and it doesn't feel like it's gimmicky either. So it's a car that's meant to be a car. I really liked the signature trim because it has that bit of luxury. There was that suede that's on the door panels and the dashboard that even my daughter was like petting the dash when I took her to school one day. So that's a little different, I haven't seen that in too many cars in this, especially in this class. That particular use of the material, so that was nice. The infotainment's not great, and because I'm spending a lot more time now on crossovers, it's hard to get a perfect read on how the size of a sedan actually stacks up. But I feel like this is just like solid in the middle of the class. The back seat is it's decent. It's not the roomiest. It's not the tightest. You step out of an SUV or a crossover into any sedan now, they all feel kind of low.
Yeah.
So that's a little weird, but there's definitely a soul.
Feels like sliding into a Miata.
Yeah, which is like that's not a bad thing, No,
not at all.
Yeah, I really do wish that they had offered this engine with a manual transmission. I think that would just turn the enjoyment right up to 11. But I understand why.
Yeah, I mean, they would sell 6, maybe 10 of them if they did that.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I also wish
they would make those, but they would make those 6 or 10 automotive journalists really, really happy.
Yeah,
because they're the only ones that would buy them.
Well, and we, because like automotive journalists would buy it too, we'd have like 12-year loans on them.
Yeah, that too.
The 6 is probably my favorite car in the class, and I think it's because it's Mazda and they're a smaller brand, they run the risk of being forgotten sometimes, which is it's just a shame because everything they make is
it's our job to remind people.
Yeah. So, and I think that I'm sure you also enjoyed driving the 6. It seems
absolutely.
Our experience
and the one, besides a manual transmission, the one other thing that I think would have made it perfect is if we could get the Mazda 6 wagon here in North America.
Yes.
They offer one in Europe and in Japan, but it's not available here. Again, because they would sell, at least a good dozen of them.
Oh, but it's so beautiful.
Oh, I know. It's a gorgeous wagon. But they don't sell them here.
Look, if Jaguar can bring the XF Sport Brake here, I think Mazda can bring the 6 wagon. It's really it's interesting. Mazda is this. Well, this brand
in those premium segments, though, there for whatever reason, there are more people that buy premium cars that are interested in in a wagon. I mean, Mercedes sells a decent number of E-Class wagons. BMW still sells, the 3 Series wagon, the 3 Series Touring here.
Not for long.
Well, yeah, probably not with the new one. But there are premium customers that are interested in that kind of vehicle. Unfortunately, in the mainstream, there just aren't. Just Americans just don't want wagons.
Yeah.
Well, they want wagons, but they want wagons that are standing 3 inches too high.
Right. I mean, I haven't looked at it. I wonder if that's a way that they could bring the wagon here. Is if they were to do like Volkswagen does with the Golf sport wagon,
with the
All-Track. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and you never know. I mean, that's not beyond the realm of possibility. Buick does that with the Regal Tour X, and Subaru does it. With the Outback. Audi's got the Quattro All-Road. The A4 All-Road, and I think they sell. No, I don't think they have the A6 here anymore, but they have the A4 All-Road. So that would be one alternative that they could pursue if they chose to. Yeah, and it might not be a bad way for Mazda to go. As they try to give American customers a few more options that are going to be appealing in the current marketplace.
Yeah, I think that just the size of that brand makes them very careful about what they do. I mean, they make everything they make has this sporty soul, and it just feels really good to drive. From even like the CX-3, it's in no way is it better than say a hatchback, other than people will actually buy it, and so you can't knock it for that.
Yeah, no, I mean you got to do what you got to do to to have a viable business. You have to sell the products that customers actually want to spend money on.
Yeah, and honestly, the money's not even that bad either. So the 6 it's not that expensive to start, and when you get to the Signature, it becomes the highest trim level. But it topped out at like 36, just over 36,000 on the Monroney. So that's really not too bad. For
yeah,
what
I mean
you get.
that's absolutely competitive with with what you'd pay for like a Fusion Titanium or Fusion Platinum, or the Accord Touring or the top end Camrys. They're all in that same price range as well.
Yeah, I almost feel like those are probably a little more expensive, but I haven't directly compared. So, I don't know. I will give the 6 a ringing endorsement. That's a great car, and if you need a sedan, you should go buy one. So they keep making them.
Yeah.
And so the Jetta, we talked on Slack about this a little bit. I was really surprised by the new Jetta too. It's also a very good sedan in a different way. I've got a Jetta S, so it's not really luxurious at all, but it's just a solid, mid-size, I guess now, or C segment still sedan. It feels really good going down the road, and I was shocked at it. Even in its most basic form, it rides and handles really well. It rotates eagerly, almost to the point where I felt like, is there some passive rear steering or something going on here? Like, how did they set this up? I haven't dug into it yet. It feels really good to drive, which I know when you had it, you also said that, and I was surprised to hear that and experience it.
Yeah, well, this time around with the Jetta, the previous generation, when they launched the previous generation in 2011, 2012, they decontented it, to get the price down, and they went with a twist beam axle and a bunch of other stuff, and it did not have the feel, it didn't feel as good as other contemporary Volkswagens. And, this time around, they didn't do that. They basically did they took the MQB platform, which is under the Golf and, almost everything else VW makes now, at least under the VW brand. And, they just did a really nice execution there. And I think because they're using a lot of the same component set across so many different vehicles now, they've been able to get the cost down because there's so much component sharing that they're able to offer the Jetta S starting at $18,500.
Yeah.
And, I don't know about, how yours turned out, but, the fuel economy was also really impressive with this 1.4
I'm amazed by
turbo.
the fuel economy. Yeah, because I've been using every little bit of power from the TSI, the 1.4 liter TSI, which performs really well. It feels very strong. And this thing clips right along, very composed at speed, shall we say. And it's kicking back like 36 miles to the gallon. And I could get it higher than that if I were less abusive to it.
Yeah.
So I'm very impressed with the fuel economy too.
Yeah, no, they did a nice job on it, and as we've said before, with the new warranties that VW has, the 6-year, 72,000 mile warranty, I think there's no longer any reason to be concerned about some of the issues that I know I've complained about in the past as a prior VW owner, and that I know lots of other VW owners have had various reliability problems. For at least for the first 6 years, you're covered bumper to bumper.
Yeah, I will say in the S trim, it still feels like there's not a ton of content here.
Yeah.
It was interesting to think I had the Sportwagen not too long ago, which is the older Jetta or older Golf at this point, or maybe it's now that I think about it, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a divide between Jetta and Golf. Yeah,
no, the current Sportwagen, Golf Sportwagen, is also an MQB.
Right. Okay. So what's weird is that
it's got, the design, the style, the design language, is still, it's the kind of the older generation Volkswagen design language. So, with the Jetta and the updated Passat that's coming, and the Arteon that's also coming in the spring, they've got an updated, look, especially to the front of the car, with a different style of grille and headlights. So, these do look a little different, but underneath, all the major components are the same.
Huh. It's interesting because the Golf Sportwagen feels a little bit more premium. It's got carpet-lined door pockets that you don't have here, and so I missed some of those features because they're subtle, but they feel nice when you notice them. And so the S, it's still an $18,000 car. It's a very good $18,000 car or $19,000 car.
Do you have the manual transmission or the automatic? No,
I had the automatic, which is good. It's a good transmission. It's a good match to the engine. It has a manual mode, a sport mode. Mm-hmm. It didn't do anything to annoy me. It should be fine with the manual, but I feel like for the mission of the car, you don't really miss it. I'd be more interested in a GLI with a manual, I think. So yeah,
which unfortunately they don't make right now.
They will, though. I know they will. Yeah. So that's my week in automobiles. I will finish it out with the Jetta S, and I think overall it's a solid car. And so let's move on to some news.
Okay.
There's been few developments. I think can we start with the Valykerie, because I think that's the coolest thing I've seen all week.
Okay. Yeah. So Aston Martin, I don't know, probably been close to 2 years now since they first announced their intention to build the Valykerie, which is, this crazy hypercar, kind of almost a Formula One car for the street,
with the sort of for the street. Name.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The coolest. And, that's one of the things, Aston Martin's, habit of naming, having car names that start with V, somehow means they always come up with some really interesting names like Vanquish and Vantage and and now the Valykerie, and they've been somewhat sparse on technical details up until now, but this week they revealed some details of the engine for the Valykerie, which is going to be a naturally aspirated 6.5 liter V12 built by Cosworth of racing engine fame, with 1,000 horsepower and an 11,000 RPM redline.
11,400 RPM fuel cutoff.
Yeah, and the peak power comes at like 10,500, I think, or 10,100 RPM, which is that's nuts, especially for such a large naturally aspirated engine.
You know what I find very curious though? Like, yes, it has 1,000 horsepower, but its torque is 545 foot-pounds. So that's a real big delta between the two. I'm not sure if I'm as excited by 545 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah, well, when you feel that 11,000 RPM red line coming up behind your head, you'll be excited. You don't worry about the torque.
Yeah, well, that's true. Reading the
and this
details
thing doesn't
of the
weigh
engine,
very much, so I think you will probably be satisfied, assuming you ever get anywhere near one of these things.
Right, well, yes, I'm going to need to spend time with one to evaluate it. So I'll have to tweet to Andy at Aston, who's on Twitter, and just make sure that I get my time with one. Reading the details of the engine are astounding. It's got gear-driven camshafts to handle that high RPM.
This thing is, despite its displacement, it's basically built like a classic Formula One engine.
Yeah,
this is the way they build pure racing engines.
It's small and light. It almost looks like it almost looks like a rocket motor or something. There's a lot of plumbing on it, and it's a pretty impressive power unit. Engines are the coolest.
Yeah.
And they've pretty aggressively gone after weight with it too, because it comes in just under 500 pounds.
454 pounds fully dressed with exhaust manifolds and everything else bolted onto the engine, which actually, I mean, for a 6.5 liter engine, that's okay. That's actually a little bit more than, like a 6.2 liter Chevy small block, which weighs, an aluminum, Chevy small block is only about 400 pounds fully dressed. So it's, but this is also, dual overhead cam and everything. Right. So that adds weight, with a single cam engine like the small block, that helps to keep the size and the weight down. So yeah, it's given what you're getting in this thing, that's not a bad weight at all.
Yeah, especially for the power density too. Like that 6.2 liter small block doesn't make even half of the horsepower.
Right, and that 1,000 horsepower is not all you're going to get. I mean, this thing is going to be a hybrid. They haven't released details of the hybrid side of this, the electric side of it. But there will be, an energy recovery system and an electric boost. So that 545 foot-pounds, that will be augmented somewhat by the electric drive system.
Huh. It just gets more and more interesting too. Like they're saying it's going to last for they want it to have a service life of 100,000 kilometers. So what is that? 66,000 miles.
62. Yeah.
There's 62. I'm so crappy at math. And then they're just like, then you just replace it. It's like, okay. I'm sure
when you're spending $2-3 million on a car, what's a new engine every 60,000 miles?
I mean, good for
and the reality,
them.
like they say, they don't actually expect many of these to be replaced because they don't expect most Valykerie owners to ever accumulate that many miles on the car.
That's a shame though. When you're developing a car, its whole purpose is to be driven, and so if I were developing this car, I'd want somebody to have to replace 3 or 4 engines in it.
Oh, I would too, but such is the nature of the people that can afford a multi-million-dollar car like this, is that they typically have so many cars that the ones like this, and this is such an extreme car that it's just generally not. It's not something, unless your name is Jim Glickenhaus, you're not likely to drive something like this on a daily basis.
Yeah, and he seems to just have decided to just make his own car company, or his
he's doing that now. So, but Aston Martin has expressed interest, for starting in 2021. They've got a new set of rules for the top class at Le Mans. So the current LMP1 prototypes will be going away following at the end of the, I guess it'll be the end of the 2019-2020 season. So starting in 2020, they're going to a new set of rules that they're calling hypercar rules for now. And it's a prototype class where the cars have some sort of loose connection to road cars, very loose, most likely. But Aston Martin has expressed interest in competing in that class. So we may see a race car based on the Valykerie running at Le Mans in 2021 or so, which would be really cool.
Yeah, that'll definitely tell them whether their engine lasts for, X amount of miles or whatever, too. There's nothing more brutal than endurance racing. So, that's the high point of...
One other interesting little tidbit I saw about this. You mentioned the gear-driven cams. One of the reasons why the engine is actually a little bit heavier than they originally intended. The original design had the gear drive for the camshafts at the front of the engine, and the engine is bolted directly to the carbon fiber tub of this car. So it's basically built like a race car. And with the gear drive system in between the engine and the tub, they found that there was so much noise being transmitted through from that gear drive mechanism that it was basically unbearable to be in the thing for more than about 5 minutes at a time.
Well, I mean, the tub, if it's bolted to the tub and it's at the front of the tub kind of acts like an amplifier.
Yeah, well, especially with something like a carbon fiber tub. So they actually changed the design of the engine to put the gear drive at the back end of the engine, so you didn't have so much noise being transmitted in.
See, that's amazing. I want to see one of those. Who's the artist that does all the cutaways? Kimball?
David Kimball, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see a drawing of.
I've got a print of his drawing of the Chevy LS9 that was in the 2008, 2009 Corvette ZR1 that's on my wall here right in front of me right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember when the LT1 it came out in the 90s. I just stared at that drawing for quite a while. My biggest concern about the Valykerie actually has nothing to do with the car, and it's more about the sort of the atmosphere for automakers in Britain, given the political movements happening right now. I wonder what any kind of exit from the European Union, if it happens, means for the auto industry in Britain on the whole. There's a lot of suppliers, and not just Aston.
There's gonna be a significant shift of production out of Britain following Brexit. A lot of the Jaguar Land Rover, has already indicated that they're going to shift a bunch of production out of England. In fact, the I-Pace is already, that one's made in Austria. It's actually assembled by Magna Steyr in Austria, and the new Land Rover Defender that's coming next year is going to be built, I believe, in a new plant in the Czech Republic. So, JLR has already indicated they're going to probably shift most of their production out of England following Brexit, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Aston Martin do some of that too. Yeah, although stuff like the Valykerie is such low volume and so insanely expensive that they'll probably keep building that in England.
But that I think is going to be sort of the biggest issue that they face is whether or not they can do it sustainably in that country.
Yeah,
depending on what happens.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, cars are political, and I don't have anything more to say about that.
Yeah.
What do we want to talk about next? Do you want to talk about the 450 kilowatt charging or the Waymo 1?
Let's just touch on the charging. Talked a little bit about charging earlier with the I-Pace.
Yeah.
Porsche just announced that they have completed testing with a 450 kilowatt DC charging system, which is even they did a joint project with BMW to evaluate this. And that goes even above and beyond what is going to be launching next year with the Taycan, which is going to support 350 kilowatt charging. And right now, the 350 kilowatt chargers are the most that you can find anywhere in the world, and there's not many of those yet, but there will be a bunch of them by the time the Taycan comes out next spring. But at 450 kilowatts, they said you can add 100 kilometers of charge in 3 minutes. So about 60 miles of charge in about 3 minutes, which is just, that's bonkers. That's basically like, the time it takes you to fill up, the gas tank.
Yeah. How doesn't that beat the hell out of the batteries?
Probably, yes. Unfortunately, that is probably a reality of charging that fast. But I think, we probably won't actually see anybody implementing 450 kilowatt charging for several years yet until we get some new battery chemistries that can really withstand that kind of pressure on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, that's
even
true.
350 is going to be tough on batteries.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of heat, right? And so if you're not careful, you wind up with a fire.
Yeah.
What could be better than a fire at a charging station that's also co-located with a gas station, which is what we keep talking about. That's great.
Well, that's actually where a lot of them are now. Is a lot, especially the DC fast charging stations. Is you'll find them at the same sites as gas stations. Often one corner of a gas station.
And so I'm reading through their info on it. So it seems like they're working on a standard actually. So it could work for 400 volt and 800 volt systems, and with a common common plug. So not trying to just keep it to like Porsche and BMW, but just develop it and then share it with the rest of the industry to get that adoption. So that
the current combo charging standard, they have two different variations of it, a Type 1 and Type 2 that we use here in North America and in Europe. Here we have the Type 1, in Europe they have the Type 2, but both of those are designed. They were designed from when they first did them several years ago. They were designed to support up to 450 kilowatt charging. So the charger won't, the charge connector shouldn't be a problem. It's just and it's just a matter of adding more capacity at the charger, and then it's more on the vehicle side where the potential problems are.
Yeah, well, and Porsche is saying that the vehicle that they're testing it with, they've developed a cooling system that gently control. They say gentle temperature control in the battery cells. Which, okay. Where does the heat go? It has to go somewhere.
Well, they're liquid. These battery packs are all liquid cooled. So they'll be circulating coolant through the pack, and it's a matter of designing the pack so that you have even cooling flow. And you can keep a relatively even temperature gradient across all the cells.
That makes sense. Yeah.
What'll happen is when you're plugged in and charging at this rate, you'll hear the cooling fan running, and pumping air through the radiator. So even though these things are electric, they still have a radiator because you've got to cool the battery pack for when you're doing this fast charging or when you're doing high performance driving. Because when you're drawing a lot of power from the pack, it's also that also heats up the battery. So whether the electrons are going in really fast or coming out really fast, it generates a lot of heat. So you still have a radiator to and cooling these things. So while it's sitting there plugged in, you'll probably hear the cooling fan running as it circulates the coolant through the radiator.
Well, it's good. Then you don't have to use resistive heating all the time in the interior either. You can just suck off some of that battery heat.
Yeah, well, that's what they do.
The most interesting to me too is that this is a government funded program, or at least partially government funded. So there's almost 8 million euros that the Ministry of Transport in Germany has pumped into this program. So it's very different from the environment we're seeing here, where there's less and less desire to fund that kind of thing and to really push vehicle efficiency and alternative fuels. So I wonder if we're going to, again, sort of look elsewhere for leadership on it versus our automotive industry that's made really great strides in electrification and building out the technology. I mean, you look at something like the Bolt, right? They're going to wind down the Chevy Volt, but that was an amazing piece of engineering that just, it was sort of a lot of reasons why it didn't catch on, but the car itself was really well engineered.
Unfortunately, I think the two fundamental problems with the Volt were the packaging. It was a little bit too small and cramped inside, and then just the cost. Yeah.
I mean, and that's like, it seems like the most we're really getting out of commitment right now on a federal level for energy efficiency, which is like, I mean, you could think that's like a defense initiative or just a overall, like there's a lot of reasons to efficiently use resources, is we're getting the tax breaks for EVs and hybrids. And those are,
well, even those, there are some in Congress that are trying to kill that.
Right. Versus other places where they're working on, quickly investing in this stuff to see the change. So, again, I don't have a conclusion to that. I'm just pointing it out. Let's make a conclusion to the podcast, though.
Okay.
Waymo has launched their robo-taxi. And kind of. Yeah. The most hilarious thing I found was that people hate them. Some people. And they will do things like stand in front of them.
Yeah, well, as I told somebody from NPR yesterday, humans are terrible. We're just a horrible species.
We are.
And given the opportunity, we will do terrible things. Vandalism is not uncommon, pretty much anywhere you go. Road rage is a real issue. When people get frustrated or for whatever reason, they'll slash tires or, go vote for a Cheeto. They do all kinds of nasty things. So, in Chandler, where Waymo is operating most of their automated Chrysler Pacificas, there are some people who are getting frustrated by these things, and it could be a question of, that they're driving too slow or too cautiously. Some people may be frustrated at the prospect of losing their jobs. There's several million people in this country that earn their living by driving. And there's over the long haul, there's a significant probability that, they will lose those jobs, or those jobs will disappear at some point. Although it's probably going to take a lot longer for those jobs to disappear than a lot of people think. But, and particularly, when you look at, the pace of this launch last week, Waymo officially launched their Waymo One service, which is their robo-taxi service in Chandler. And while Waymo has been doing testing, kind of around the greater Phoenix area, this service, is actually much more limited in its scope. They started off with, they had about 400 people in their early rider program that launched about a year and a half ago, which was their beta program for this. And about 2/3 of those people, have now been transferred over from the early rider program into Waymo One, which is now the paid commercial service. And they're going to gradually open up the service to anybody that wants to use these vehicles, that wants to hail a ride from these vehicles. But they're doing that very slowly and only, as they're confident that everything's working. And the area where they're operating in is basically just right around Chandler. And it's roughly 100 square mile area. The city of Chandler itself is about 65 square miles. The city of Phoenix is, for scale, is about 517 square miles. So, it's actually a pretty small area where they're operating, and if you needed to go from Chandler into Phoenix, Chandler is a suburb of Phoenix. If you wanted to go into the city of Phoenix or Scottsdale, you're going to have to find a different way to get there. These vans are not going to get you there right now. And the pricing for the van, for the Waymo One service is currently a little bit higher than for an Uber or a Lyft for the same ride. Not by much, but just it's a little bit more. And also, they're not exactly completely driverless. There's still an Uber staff person in these vans, mostly there to answer questions and assist, and help people understand what's going on. But there is somebody there that can take over if necessary.
Well, Waymo, I think they're really out in front of just about everybody else with their program, and they're a lot quieter about what they're doing, I think, than somebody like Uber has been. They're very methodical and careful. They're taking a real engineer's approach. It's informed by, I think, it's got to be informed by John Kravchuk and his experience in the automotive industry.
Oh, absolutely.
Knowing how to deploy this stuff and doing it carefully. And even his statements recently have been like, look, like this stuff is not coming and it's coming, but it's not going to be like 5 years. It's more like think decades. And that's a better timeline. And just to have that realism is refreshing versus all of the other hot takes out there that say like, all the regular car companies are not going to be around in 5 years. Like, no, that's not going to happen.
They're not going away anytime soon. The other thing here is that while Waymo has proclaimed this the first commercial automated ride hailing service, even that is not entirely accurate. Since starting in January of this year, Aptiv and Lyft started doing a pilot in Las Vegas. During CES last January, they started giving rides in their fleet of automated vehicles, up and down the Las Vegas Strip. And as of October, they after CES was done, they continued the program. So basically, if you're in Las Vegas, if you're at any of the major hotels, and if you open up the Lyft app, if there's one of those vehicles nearby, you'll get the option to ride, to take your ride in an automated BMW built by Aptiv as an alternative to a regular human-driven Lyft vehicle. And as of October, they had given over 20,000 paid rides. So they've actually been operating what is essentially an equivalent service, a paid commercial ride hailing service since January of this year. So Waymo isn't even really the first to do this.
Well, they'll tell you they're the best.
Yeah. And, in many respects, they probably are. Yeah.
I don't necessarily disagree. And I think too,
although, in my own experience and having ridden in many of these vehicles, I wouldn't say that they're, many of these vehicles from different companies, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily head and shoulders above anybody else. I mean, I'd say they have an edge right now, but not by a whole lot.
Well, you're in that place, like it's a nascent technology, so they're all trying to solve the same problems and they're using different approaches. And at a certain point, some of them are just going to get solved by there's going to be that sort of best approach that happens. And that will sort of just become a more widely adopted way to solve that particular problem. As we have seen in the regular auto industry, when they were sorting out the cars that we have today 100 years ago, there were a lot of different solutions to things that are just sort of, very commonly solved across the industry. I think the people in Arizona, they have a right to be jerks to these cars to a certain degree. I mean, like the Uber crash happened in Tempe?
Yeah, it was in Tempe. I don't know. I don't know that anybody necessarily has a right to be a jerk. I mean, you can be frustrated, but you don't have to go beat up a car or slash the tires, or throw paint at it or something.
I disagree. I guess I understand, that it's in their community, and it has an impact, and that can be frustrating. And from far away, it's easy to just sort of laugh at it. But I think if I had automated cars driving up and down the streets of my neighborhood and just sort of being there all the time, it would also be a thing that I may react to. I don't think I would vandalize anything, but I would loudly complain, possibly. Because I do that.
You loudly complain, Dan?
Yeah.
I can't imagine that.
All right. I think that's a podcast, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely.
We didn't get any questions. I didn't see much.
There was one, but we'll come back to it next week.
All right. So with
late.
that, we have finished out this podcast. So thanks everybody for listening. You know where to find us. We are at Wheelbearings on Twitter. We are Wheelbearing Media on Facebook. You can email us. I think it's Wheelbearings or Wheelbearings Podcast at Wheelbearings.com or Gmail. I don't know.
Wheelbearingscast@gmail.com.
So
or just use the contact. Just use the contact link on wheelbearings.media, and it'll get to us.
Correct. That's what I was going to say. Go to the site.
Yeah.
and you can listen to us there. And please, feel free to leave us a review of the show in iTunes or whatever other application you're using. We'll see everybody next time.
All right. Bye.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.